It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set!
Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle. Once again, it is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands, heard around the world on the iHeart Radio app. Download today. It is free. The website, put the .com on it. Doggone it. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Welcome back on a Monday. Little rain this morning. I was taking a look at the weather over the next few days. I mentioned this, at some point last week maybe. I appreciate the free water for the yard, that's for sure. And it looks like we're going to have a spotty week when it comes down to rain. I think it's going to be off and on. Some thunderstorms rolled in this morning. Just a little rumble, so to speak. But all that being said, man, the weekend that we saw at the College World Series, and it continued today into this afternoon's matchups between Tennessee and Stanford. And then coming up tonight at 7 o'clock, it'll be top-seeded Wake Forest and fifth-seeded LSU. Arguably the two best teams in college baseball facing off in that one. And the winner of that game will take I would say, a significant advantage the rest of the way by comparison to everybody else out in Omaha. But I do want to say, you're talking about going into, right now the 7th and then eventually the 8th game at the College World Series. And in those first 6 matchups, you had 5 one-run ball games. It's been incredible. Tight, down to the wire. It has been awesome. Oral Roberts getting past TCU in the 9th inning, 6-5. I think they scored 4 runs in the top half of the 9th inning to win that one in the opening game on Friday. Then you had Florida scoring late to beat Virginia 6-5. You had Wake Forest on Saturday beating Stanford, come from behind after a weather delay, 3-2. You had LSU beating Tennessee 6-3. That's been the only game in Omaha all weekend decided by more than a single run. 6-3, the final score in that all-SEC matchup. LSU pushing Tennessee into the losers bracket to take on Stanford today. Then you had TCU and Virginia in an elimination game, 4-3. The Cavaliers are 2 in barbecue, and Virginia has the second most one-run defeats at the College World Series dating back to, I believe, 1999, so nearly in a 25-year span. The only team with more one-run loss defeats than Virginia is Stanford, who took a one-run loss on Saturday afternoon to Wake Forest, the top seed. So it has been wild. And then second-seeded Florida beat Oral Roberts 5-4 last night. Give Florida credit. Give LSU credit. The SEC was flexing their proverbial muscles into the tournament. And those two teams have looked really good so far. Really good so far. A measuring stick game tonight, though, for LSU. More on those programs and really all of the programs, as there's been a unique challenge taking place at a local establishment out in Omaha it's kind of gotten a little bit out of control, but I'll fill you in on that in just a little bit. But my goodness, could you ask for anything more than 5 one-run ball games out of the 6 games that were played over the weekend? If you are a connoisseur of college baseball, this College World Series delivered. Arguably, and look, I know it's not over. I understand we have to go all the way to the 26th, potentially next Monday. We've got potentially to go a week. Things could wrap up on Sunday with game 2 of the finals next week, June the 25th. But at this point, could you argue against this being perhaps the best College World Series you've ever witnessed? And look, I understand there are a gracious plenty of you that don't really follow college baseball to this ilk, especially if your beloved Tigers are out of it, or if you're a Gamecock fan, since they're not in it, maybe you just say, all right, I'm checking out until football season. But if you tuned in this weekend to watch the games that were unfolding out in Omaha, you were not left disappointed, because it was drama from the first pitch to the final pitch in really all but one ball game. That's how tight the games were. That's incredible. That just I think it accentuates the fact that, look, even though you've got one of the top teams in the country in Wake Forest there, the number 1 seed, and then an Oral Roberts, who was a 4 seed in their regional, who fought their way into the Super Regionals, knocked off Oregon, made it to Omaha, and would be considered the biggest underdog there, in my opinion. The fact that all of these teams have competed at such a high level and battled the way they battled. I mean, it's been compelling drama. Compelling drama. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, you can be a part of this program anytime, any place, and of course, anywhere on our website, ClemsonSportsTalk.com. But I mentioned that there was another pseudo competition, I guess you would say, going on out in Omaha, and that is the Jello shots battle. I guess might be the best terminology for it. That is taking place as well. So I believe the bar is called Rocco's, and there is a Rocco's Jello shot challenge going on, and I don't know how many Jello shots are in Rocco's Jello shot challenge, but they're $5 a pop. So I have to believe that it's more than one, because if any yahoo is out there paying $5 for a singular Jello shot, they're not very intelligent. And that would mean that the teams, or the fans, I should say, of these teams thus far have thrown back 26,246 of these Jello shots. Now, again, please tell me that this is not just a singular Jello shot for $5. If it is, man, inflation has absolutely taken Jello shots through the roof. I think when I was at Clemson, you could buy a Jello shot for $1, maybe.
You were serious about that?
Yes, I can't imagine that $5 Jello shots is one Jello shot. But who knows? But here's the thing: these fans have purchased 26,246 Jello shots at $5 a pop. That comes out to $131,230. That's a ton of coin just for Jello shots at Rocco's. Rocco, my man, you, sir, are a genius if this is something that is new for this year. And so they've got a board, okay? They've got a board lined up with all of the teams. And I guess when you go and buy a Jello shot, you say, I'm pulling for Virginia and I'd like a Jello shot. And then Rocco's Bar proceeds to give you the Jello shot for $5. And they tally those marks. And speaking of Virginia, they have the lowest amount of Jello shots purchased at a measly 566. It's probably not going to get much bigger because they're 2 in barbecue. But LSU, out of 26,246 Jello shots sold, the Bayou Bengal fans have purchased 11,948 so far.
Oh, yeah.
That is absurd. Nearly half of the Jello shots purchased have been purchased by LSU fans.
That is ridiculous.
Well, have you met an LSU fan lately? These guys party. But they have bought 11,948. The rest of the teams combined have only bought 14,298. Man, what an idea Rocco's Bar had. 131,000, and we still got a week to go. They're likely to make $250,000. $250,000 off of Jello shots over the next week.
Well, looky what we have here.
I mean, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I was looking at it. You know, first off, remember, TCU and Oral Roberts are both Christian, universities. But they've had a lot more Jello shots than Stanford and Virginia. So I don't know. Stanford and Virginia are pretty liberal universities. I'm guessing distance to travel there is a little more difficult, so there are probably less fans from Stanford and Virginia. Or maybe Stanford and Virginia people are a little more upscale and they don't do Jello shots. They're too busy having wine and cheese instead. But TCU and Oral Roberts, way out in front of Virginia and Stanford. By the way, second place, shout out to the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, 4,744 Jello shots at Rocco's. That's second best. But there's a huge gap between Wake Forest and LSU. Let's just say there's a huge gap between LSU and everybody else. And if I had to be critical, Florida, 1,626 Jello shots. That's all you can do? What are you guys doing? Conserving yourself for football season or something because you think it's going to be a bad year? Going to be a lot of drinking going on in the parking lot? I mean, is that what this is about? The Florida Gators are behind TCU, Wake Forest, Oral Roberts. Obviously, they're behind LSU. Tennessee's also 1,429. Tennessee's behind Florida. But in my brain, I see Florida as more of a party school. $131,230 in Jello shots. I can't believe it. And to see what LSU is doing out there. Not on the diamond, at the bar. These guys are bringing the Cajun straight to Omaha, and they are getting after it. They're pushing over 12,000 today. Would you take LSU to have over half by the time this thing is said and done? That's the question. And if you would take, I have seen an updated chart. I have misrepresented this chart. There has been an update. LSU has eclipsed 12,000. They eclipsed 12,000. They were at 12,325. My numbers for this whole segment have been off because I just saw a new screen grab. Sad face emoji. Sad face emoji. Virginia, let's see. Their number didn't change. Virginia's gone. They're done. Rackham, 566. That's it for Virginia. LSU now at 12,325. It's almost like LSU fans now have to go to Rocco's and have to take a Jello shot just to make this list even more absurd. According to the there is a Twitter account for this, the College World Series. Let me give you the CWS shot board. Says that 31,215 shots were sold last year. 27,367 have been sold this year. That number is going to get shattered. Only 4,000 more Jello shots to go to break the all-time mark. Oh, yeah, that thing is cooked. LSU will get 4,000 more before it's all said and done. Clearly, their fans have money to burn, and they're not ashamed to burn it on Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. 803-450-0086. I want to know more. I'm scrolling through this Twitter account because I want to know if it is just a singular Jello shot for $5. If it's a $5 Jello shot, that thing better be. Remember that pan that your grandma made Jello in, that Jello mold for $5? I better be getting a big Jello mold. Better not be just some little plastic cup. Let's see what we're looking at here. Maybe it's the one where they put them in the they've got like the syringe. I've seen people do that before. I don't know, man. College World Series Jello shots. LSU about to lap the field. The entire field. The entire field combined. It's nutty. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, you can be a part of the program anytime, any place, and of course, anywhere on our website. That's ClemsonSportsTalk.com. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Little programming note. We'll be off the air the week of July the 4th. You know, we always take that week off here from the program for a couple of reasons. One, we're already going to be off for the 4th of July holiday anyway, so it just makes it a little bit easier and go ahead and take that whole week off. So 2 weeks from today, July the 3rd through the 7th, will be my little summer vacation. I've also got our good buddy, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, Morgan Thomas. I'm hoping that Morgan will be able to step into the arena and hang out with you guys the week of July 17th through the 21st. My son's got soccer camp up at Clemson, so going to hope to get up there to see some of those matches, and that will, again, be taking place the week of the 17th. So we'll see how it all works out, but I did want to give you a quick update on that front. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line. Again, a big couple of weeks for the Clemson Tigers on the recruiting front. We'll give you some updates on that when we return right here The show that shakes the Southland is Clemson Sports Talk on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, heard around the world on the iHeart Radio app. Back at it, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk, 803-450-0086, 803-450-0086. Well, it's been a few days now, but Clemson securing the commitment of 2025 four-star quarterback Blake Hebert was a huge deal heading into the weekend. Of course, you look back and think about how early this commitment took place, and this was what I was saying on Friday's show. Clemson has not had two guys committed this early in forever, and the fact that it's a future quarterback and running back with Gideon Davidson, both four-star prospects, both out of state, Davidson from Virginia, Hebert from Massachusetts. I mean, you're talking about the foundations of the 2025 recruiting class already being put in place, and it's not as if these are a couple of obscure pieces to the puzzle. These are the main pieces to the puzzle. I mean, these are the foundational building blocks of the offensive side of the ball under Garrett Riley down the road. And look, there's always the off chance, given Riley's profile, that he's not around Clemson to coach these guys. They're like, you might not believe that, you might not like that, but let's just assume for a second that Garrett Riley's offense this year is phenomenal. Let's assume that Garrett Riley's offense at Clemson in 2024 is phenomenal. Do you not believe that a guy who is as closely entwined with his brother in terms of his name, when you think about how young he is, do you not think, like, of all the coordinators Clemson's had under Dabo Swinney, of all the coordinators, outside of maybe Brent Venables, who arrived at Clemson as a unabashed, established defensive genius, one of the best defensive minds in college football, outside of Brent Venables, I don't think there's been a coordinator at Clemson under Dabo Swinney that's had the profile to leave as quickly as Garrett Riley would if he has two incredible seasons at Clemson. And it won't be for some mid-level SMU the way that Chad Morris left to go to SMU. It will be a Power 5 program that comes calling for a guy like Garrett Riley. And it won't be some, half-off college Power 5 program. It'll be a program that trends towards the college football playoff. It'll be a program like, say, Billy Napier gets in trouble at Florida. It could be a Florida. And I'm not trying to convince you that Florida's on the college football playoff radar per se, but it's going to be the type of program that can get there in a hurry. So there's no telling if Hebert and Davidson will even play under Garrett Riley. But if we focus on Hebert for a minute, and I brought this up on Friday. Remember, this is a kid who's nearly 6'4". He weighs 215 pounds. And I said here on the program that I felt like when you look at Max Duggan and the success that he had at TCU this past season, Duggan, 6'2", 207 pounds. And we're talking about Hebert having two more seasons. 2 more seasons at high school. And look, do I think that he needs to come in at 230 pounds? I don't. And if we talk about, say, a DJ Uiagalelei, who arrived at Clemson at 6'4", like 250 pounds, do you want to see? No. But this kid at 6'4", 215 pounds is put together and athletic enough to not only be strong in the pocket, take the occasional big hit, but also is athletic, and certainly for Clemson gives them, I believe, under Garrett Riley, the type of threat they want on the offensive side of the ball. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line, be a part of the program. Taj Boyd, I was trying to see what his playing weight was. Now, Taj was a little bit shorter. Taj was about 6'1". They got him checking in at 222 pounds. You're talking about a kid a little taller than Taj, about the same weight, but put together. And look, Taj Boyd, even at his size, the stocky build, you still saw him have some incredible runs during his time at Clemson. Not to be dismissive of what Clemson's currently got in Cade Klubnik and Christopher Vizina and their paths that they'll have to take as quarterbacks in Tiger Town. But it would certainly seem that the look that Garrett Riley wants is the exact look that he's got from Hebert. And this is a young man that'll have a couple of years to also. So let's say that Clemson would like to see him more at, say, 210. Well, he can make that happen. Let's say Clemson would like to see him more at 225 when he arrives. He can make that happen. You've got so much time still at the high school level. But what you really see, I think, is a fair comparison and an athletic player in Blake Hebert that he, tends to trend towards being the ideal type quarterback that I think Garrett Riley wants in his system. 803-450-0086. Text line, phone line, again, be a part of the program anytime, any place, and, of course, anywhere. Big news out of the NBA over the weekend. The Phoenix Suns making a huge play as they add one of the top ball players out of the East and potentially move one of the greatest point guards of all time. We'll touch on that when we return. Stay with us. Coming up in hour 2 here on Clemson Sports Talk, we'll be joined by none other than William Qualkenbush. Always look forward to catching up with Qualk to talk a little college football, baseball, basketball. We'll get into everything here on the program with Qualk. But the big news out of the NBA over the weekend, outside of course, the Denver Nuggets wrapping up the championship and having their parade, which was it was something. I don't know. I don't know who partied harder, the folks at Denver or the folks in Las Vegas with the Golden Knights winning the NHL. I watched some highlights from both parades, and it's wild. It's wild out there, kids. Remember when the Los Angeles Lakers won the title in 87, 88, whatever, when they went back-to-back, the first one of those back-to-back. Pat Riley was on stage. It's a rather reserved event. You don't see, a bunch of guys back then taking shots and drinking and all this. And maybe that was going on. I just was too young to notice. But I remember Pat Riley got to the microphone and he says this.
I feel grateful to be part of the team. I feel grateful to be alive and living in Los Angeles. And I'm guaranteeing everybody here, next year we're going to win it again.
And they did. They went out and won it. But I recall after they won it that second time around, I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar that when they were at their championship ceremony the following season, he put a towel, I think it was, over Pat Riley's mouth so he couldn't call for another repeat because it was so tough on the Lakers to pull off that repeat, just having that audio out there. And the thing about it, too, is right after he says it, Pat Riley turns his head real quick to the left to look at the players. And man, as a Laker growing up, that was awesome. That was awesome. And then they did it. But in the NBA over the weekend, the biggest news is the fact that the Phoenix Suns are working on finalizing a deal that will send Chris Paul, arguably one of the greatest point guards of all time, to the Washington Wizards. In return, they would get Bradley Beal, making a new big three out in Phoenix with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. Beal averaged 23.2 points per game this past season for the Wizards, 3.9 rebounds, and 5.4 assists per game. With the move, there is the off chance that you could see Chris Paul be balled out by the Wizards and then move to, say, Los Angeles. People are speculating he could end up with either the Lakers, where he probably should have been years ago had the NBA not vetoed that deal. And then I think he ended up with the Clippers, but the Clippers are also on the table as an option, it looks like, for Chris Paul. Now, what do you have in Phoenix? Well, you've got a case of Kevin Durant now being the old head when it comes down to his stature on the Phoenix Suns. You've got Bradley Beal, who is 29 years old. You've got Devin Booker, who is an elite scorer, a top 5, maybe top 10 player in the NBA. And at this point, I think you've got maybe the big three in the West, but is it going to be enough for these guys to come together and win? Kevin Durant has been a part of many big threes in the NBA's recent history, right? I mean, he was in Oklahoma City with Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Couldn't do anything. Goes to Golden State, wins a couple of titles, maybe could have won 3 had he not gotten hurt. And then leaves abruptly, partly because he was not happy with Draymond Green. And quite frankly, if you keep up with Draymond Green, you could kind of see why. But then he goes to the Nets, and it doesn't work out there. And he's playing with Kyrie Irving and James Harden. Then he ends up with Phoenix, and he's got Devin Booker and Chris Paul. It didn't work out last year. Now, that was just part of the season. He got hurt. Chris Paul got hurt. But now the Phoenix Suns just got a lot younger offensively by getting rid of Paul, who's already closing in on 40, if you can believe that. Chris Paul is 38 years old, and there is potential that Paul could end up, like I said, in Los Angeles to play alongside an aging LeBron James. But that would give LeBron, Anthony Davis, a legitimate point guard who is still very much a threat. I mean, look, Chris Paul, 13 points, almost 14, 13.9 points per game, 8.9 assists, though, being the key stat of what he's been able to do or what he did this past season with the Phoenix Suns. You compare that to his career, his numbers have trended to be more towards the 19 kind of points per game. So he's a little down offensively when it comes to scoring, but his assists per game are as high as they were his second season in the league. And he's had bigger years where he's gone for more than 8.5. He's gone all the way up to, I think his career high was 11.6 per game back in 07-08 when he was with New Orleans. But if he were to end up with Los Angeles, as it's being speculated, well, now the Lakers have a older but more reliable point guard than they've had. And additionally, you've got Phoenix becoming a much younger team, albeit the fact that really Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are both shooting guards, but both equally capable of handling the rock. The question probably becomes, though, what is the future of Kevin Durant in that system? How many shots does he get? And has he crossed over into the realm of where you have to get at some point in your tenure in the NBA, where LeBron is now, where you're willing to yield to other players when necessary? Kevin Durant's never really been that guy. It looked like at times this past season that he was becoming that player, but a lot of people feel like he's still got a lot of points in front of him in terms of his ability to score. Can he and will he be able to make it work in Phoenix? Because for Durant, let's be honest, it's really only worked once, and I put most of that success on the other two guys, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Quick break. We'll bounce back. Final segment, hour one next. Final segment of hour one coming up. William Qualkenbush joins the program. 803-450-0086. So talking about the NBA a minute ago, I mentioned Draymond Green. Draymond Green has declined the option. He'll become a free agent. Declining a $27.6 million player option will enter unrestricted free agency. His agent, Rich Paul, said they will continue to talk with Golden State and explore all options. Let me tell you about Draymond real quick. Draymond Green reminds me a lot in his erratic behavior of guys we've seen like Rasheed Wallace, guys we've seen like Dennis Rodman. But I think the fair comparison is Rodman more than anything else. Dennis Rodman was a nut when it came down to some of his behavior on the court, his antics. Draymond Green the same. But both of those guys are, I think, more interested in winning than anything else. Draymond Green's a four-time All-Star. He's that third option with the Warriors that rarely gets talked about, but he is an issue when it comes down to relationships with other players. He's partly the reason that Kevin Durant left. He's the reason Jordan Poole doesn't really want to be there in a lot of respects because of the incident that took place between those two where Green punched Jordan Poole during practice. And so I don't know what his future is in the NBA or even if it's even with the Golden State Warriors. But I want to say I think that even with all the issues, and that's exactly what they are, the issues that he has, he's a guy that makes your team better because he does the dirty work. He absolutely does the dirty work. So we'll see. It's possible that he could end up, anywhere in the league. And I think he would make a team better. And I think some of the baggage that he's already gotten from his time at Golden State doesn't necessarily have to follow him. And so there's obviously the possibility that you could see him making a team somewhere in the NBA a lot better because of his willingness to play good defense and his willingness to be a role player, but with an all-stars type ability. Now, I don't know if at this point in his career, he's still got that type of play in him. But when you look at it, I mean, he has been fairly steady being an 8-point scorer and an 8-rebound guy. He's not quite a double-double his entire career, but he's close. 8.5 points, 7.2 rebounds, and then probably an underrated aspect of his game, nearly 7 assists per game, 6.8. That's this past season. And for his career, he's 8'7", 7 rebounds, 5.6 assists. So he's not a selfish player, although he has selfish moments. But that's another big potential move in the NBA, depending on where a guy like Draymond Green could land. I'll say this, as much as at times in his career I've kind of questioned him or maybe even disliked him or probably had some negative things to say about some of his antics here on the program, I just call it like I see it. You want to act like you've lost your mind? I'm going to call you out for it. You want to do things that harm your franchise? I'm going to call you out for it. But, and I don't know, maybe he stays at Golden State. He's been with that team a decade. I'll say this, though. I think he's a significant piece for not only the Warriors, but any team that lands him. And I have enjoyed getting a chance to watch some clips. I've never listened to his full podcast. And I know at times it's been a little bit controversial, much like his play as a player and the things that he's done for and against his teams in recent history. But insightful, funny, honest, compelling. That's what I get when I tune in to see some of the stuff that he puts out on social media. So big news there on that front. Coming up, don't forget William Qualkenbush. I mentioned it a few minutes ago. He will be a part of the program in hour number 2, as he is most weeks. Wasn't here last week. He was on vacation, but he is back at it on 105.5 The Roar in the upstate. All right, final thing. Got about, nearly 2.5 minutes here before the top of the hour break. I saw this. If you recall, one of my favorite players all time in college growing up was Deion Sanders. I mean, he was so electric at Florida State, and then in the NFL with a handful of teams from the Falcons to the Cowboys to the Niners. Now he's at Colorado, and he's arguably one of the biggest storylines this season, coming in from Jackson State to coach the Buffaloes. But according to reports that came out on Friday, Deion Sanders might have to have his left foot amputated as a result of circulation issues. He had 2 toes amputated back in 2021. I don't know what this would mean for his coaching career. I can't recall a coach that's had any portion of his lower extremity amputated in coach, but it doesn't preclude you from coaching. But I will say that part of, I think, the allure of going and playing for Deion Sanders, especially if you were a defensive back, even though he's 55, you thought, hey, this guy can kind of show me some techniques and move. I don't know how well he'd be able to move. I think this is a big blow to Deion Sanders, just in terms of some of those guys that would have wanted to go and see how he switches his hips and turns and runs and things like that, even at 55. But now, and I don't know how he moved minus 2 toes, but if he ends up losing his foot, I think that kind of hurts him in a lot of respects with some of the players that might want to come and play for him in the secondary. Just my thoughts. Again, I don't want the man to lose his foot, but I'll be honest, that's kind of where I am on it. We'll hit a break. William Qualkenbush joins us next.
It's time for Clemson Sports Talk with Lawton Swan.
Ready, set.
Just call me Swanee.
Tiger style. Tiger style.
It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show. This shakes the Southland Clemson Sports Talk. Unfortunately, not going to be able to get up with Qualt today. I thought we'd be able to, but I can't. So we'll see if we can roll him over to Wednesday. But if you weren't here on Friday, then you missed our interview that we did with our good buddy Luke Winstall, talking recruiting. We talked recruiting in hour 1. Let's dive back into what Luke had to say, because that was a great interview with him late last week. Luke, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing great, Lawton. I'm a little sunburned today, but otherwise happier than ever.
Well,
All
look,
good.
that's
Thank
what
you for
happens
having
when
me.
you're on the recruiting trail everywhere. You should probably consider yourself like a Sunshine State guy, given how much you're outdoors right now. But you're a Peach guy. You're a Georgia guy. But give us some insight. Where were you today?
Today I was down in Thomaston, Georgia. You know, we're blessed in the Southeast, all across, but especially in Georgia. Doesn't matter how big or small the town, there's some real talent. And today, Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall pick in last year's draft, hosted a football camp for free, giving back to his community. So came out and saw him and saw Malik Herring and all the talent from this Thomaston area that, isn't known for a lot, but it's sure known for those 2 guys now, a Super Bowl champion and a number 1 overall pick.
Follow Luke on Twitter, as I mentioned earlier, at Luke Winstall. All right, Luke. So Clemson's 2024 class, we talked about that last week and the pickups that they had, garnering a couple of 5-stars and a 4-star pickup. But this week, things got busy on Wednesday with the 2025 recruiting class as running back Gideon Davidson out of Lynchburg, Virginia, committed. Give us some thoughts on what you've seen from Davidson. I know he was at Dabo Swinney's camp recently. His story, being a kid from Ghana, is absolutely as interesting as any we've followed in a long time. And then to have 2 more years of high school football in front of him, man, this kid could really develop into a star.
For sure. He is the highest rated running back prospect that Clemson's taken on my board since Phil Maffa. So if that kind of tells you, Clemson running back recruiting, I've been waiting and seeing now for Coach Spiller, CJ Spiller. When's he going to have the big fish? And it seems like, David Eziomume was a great take in the 2024 class, great evaluation, but Eziomume wasn't really known as a top 75 player. He might be now or after this season. He continues to improve. But when we talk about Gideon Davidson, this is really the biggest fish I've seen Clemson take at that position since, Maffa 2020, 2021, that area. So what I like about Davidson is just overall his ability as an all-purpose guy. He's someone that, rated so highly for Clemson, fits the bill in terms of Division I size, speed. He checks a lot of boxes, and he's one of those that I feel you slot him in, and he's one, what's going to happen when Maffa's gone and Shipley's gone and the running back room's changing and maybe up for grabs. Well, Gideon Davidson's one that could come in, and we're talking, if he enrolls early, we might be talking spring game, might be talking fall camp. This is a guy that could get some reps very early. He's showing those signs even just after his sophomore year, that this is someone that has everything you need, and he's looking to be on the trajectory where he's got enough polish to play early. So for Clemson, that is a perfect way to start your 25 class with Gideon Davidson.
All right. So from that standpoint, you fast forward just a couple of days and you find out that another, and I think it's key here, right, Luke? Clemson just handed out these 2025 commits like 16, 17 days ago. And now there's 2 guys in the fold as 4-star quarterback Blake Hebert out of Lawrence, Massachusetts, earlier today, in fact, decided he was going to commit to the program. And he told me that a lot of the reason he committed to Clemson had to do with the relationship that he had already built with Garrett Riley. What do you think about his commitment? And ultimately, is he and are he and Gideon Davidson the quarterback running back duo of the future for the Tigers?
Well, it certainly looks like it. You look at 24/7 Sports rankings have both of them as top 175 prospects. The thing that I look at with Hebert, with him being up in Massachusetts, I have not gotten to see him in person yet. But just from tape that I've gotten to see, the first word that comes to mind is smooth. I like the way he moves in the pocket, seems very fluid. And he's one that in Massachusetts football is connecting on deep balls left and right, hitting guys in the corner of the end zone. So it seems like a big play type of quarterback that Coach Riley really would enjoy having, and someone that really would fit that system. So when I look at a guy like Hebert, looking at the 1-2 punch, the way you say it, I really like what the future holds. And I think this is another good evaluation by Clemson. And a lot of times when I say good evaluation by Clemson, I'm saying that they've picked up a prospect that is ranked, but is just starting their upward trajectory. By the end of high school, Hebert might be a top 100 quarterback. It depends on some of these camps and evaluations, but I think Clemson's gotten in where they need to at this relationship, picked up the commitment. He's going to rise up rankings. He's going to get much more popular than he is. You're going to hear his name a lot more. A lot of people, whether it's fans or media in this cycle, are just getting to know the 2025 quarterbacks. We've got 2024 Elite 11 going on right now. But for Hebert, that's another one for Clemson. I like the evaluation, and the relationship with Riley is something that you can't underestimate with some of these prospects, because Clemson is talking to 2025, 2026, sometimes even younger than that recruits. They obviously don't extend the offer, but they'll do this thing where they bring guys in for visits, they talk, they say, we're going to wait on the offer, but sometimes they'll say we're going to, maybe leaning towards giving you an offer. I've heard different things from recruits of suggestions they're in line for that conversation. But just because it doesn't come officially until later doesn't mean that Clemson just started building the relationship with Hebert when they offered him a week or two ago.
Follow him on Twitter. Yeah, follow him on Twitter at Luke Winstel. And I'll say this, Hebert at about 6'4", 215 pounds. I think sometimes when we talk about the numbers just for the casual observer, that doesn't mean a whole lot, but I can put it into perspective. Trevor Lawrence, when he committed to Clemson, was 6'5", 200 pounds. So you're talking about a kid right now that's a junior, going to be a junior, that's already got a pretty nice physique. I mean, he's not a string bean, right? And I think if you look at the quarterbacks, like a quarterback like Max Duggan last year at TCU, it was not only a guy that could throw the football down the field, but you also could utilize him in the run game. Do you think that a part of the allure for Clemson, and maybe even more so Garrett Riley with Hebert, was about the physicality that he might be able to bring to the table?
Well, when you play in a Power 5 league, your quarterbacks now have got to be thicker and bulkier than ever. Some of the guys, like walking around Cam Newton when he's down here doing 7-on-7s, seeing just how thick he is, and then you look at, okay, maybe that's an anomaly, it's Cam. Other quarterbacks you see, like we saw Davis Mills come back to Atlanta, and he really is thick. They've got the muscle because you've got to have that durability to hold up. So now it's not just, you want to have the weight so that you can do these different types of things on offense, but it's also having that durability so you're not hurt all the time. And that's something that now with quarterbacks, I'm seeing prioritized by trainers. I'm seeing people like Julian Lewis and his family. He's a 2026, but they're already working on muscle, weight room, making sure he's thick and able to be durable. So that's something we're seeing come earlier than ever. So instead of guys having to go to college and get on the weight training plan and meal plan to get their bodies ready, or enroll early for that. Now we're seeing that already start in high school with a lot of these elite guys, and it's leading to a prospect like Hebert that's already beginning to check those next level type boxes.
So just thinking about the 2025 class, I look back in our recruiting archives over on ClemsonSportsTalk.com, and one of the great things about the list on our site is it tells you when kids committed, right, Luke? So it kind of piqued my interest the other day when Gideon Davidson committed. I was like, man, I can't remember Clemson having a guy committed 2 years really in advance in a long time. And I had to go all the way back to 2018 when a 2020 commit, and he's still on the roster at Clemson, committed to the Tigers, and that was DeMonte Capehart. His name slipped my mind for a second. DeMonte Capehart, right? But the Tigers didn't have a second commit until July that year. And so recently, Clemson's kind of been gaining commitments a little later in the process. How important can it be for the Tigers that they've got not just two guys already committed by June the 16th, 2 years in advance, but that it's a quarterback and a running back? I mean, how much can this kind of anchor, in your opinion, the rest of the 2025 class for Dabo Swinney?
It definitely puts a picture in your mind of what this offense is going to look like, because 2024, you take what looks like a heavy receiver class. Then 25, you've got the quarterback, another running back coming in. So when I look at that group, I say, okay, this is shaping up. And the thing of Clemson is not just getting early commits, but these are high level. These are guys that could play as a freshman, if not will play as a sophomore. So that's the first thing that stands out. But because of the era that we're in and the era that we're just heading towards permanently in college football, when you commit to Clemson, and Coach Sweeney's going to keep this rule, you can't take visits elsewhere. You can't do this other stuff. You got to cancel your other OVs if you have them set. And that commitment means that these 2025 prospects are not taking OVs to other schools. They're not going, on game day visits and all these different things. Like, that's obviously not how it works. So it's really hard to get a prospect to say, 2 years early, I'm ending my recruitment. I'm punching this in, which speaks to the salesman that Dabo Swinney is, first off. But second off, also tells you that Clemson hasn't had these anchors, like you said. The anchor recruit is what I like to call him, of someone that can go out in their area and talk to guys and pitch guys and say, hey, maybe it's a guy on a 7-on-7 team or a high school team. Hey, if you think it's fun playing with me now, let's go do it at Clemson. Right. And that kind of stuff works. And we've seen Christopher Vizina, when he committed a year early, we saw what he was able to do. He was a huge part in forming that D-line class that Clemson brought in last year, even though it's not even his side of the ball. he was a part of it. He's part of why Clemson recruited Alabama so well last year. So having those anchors, having a Virginia guy, a Massachusetts guy, Clemson's known to take a few people every year or two from that Northeast area, and also having them on game day visits. You'll have 2025 commits that can sit with and talk to other top 2025 prospects that come in the fall for a game and say, hey, I'm already locked in. Here's why. We need you. And that's an extra touch that helps a school like Clemson sell themselves in a way that really fits their brand.
Man, I'll tell you what, it looks like the future could be very bright for the Tigers in 2025. You want to keep up with everything on the recruiting front. Make sure you follow him right now on Twitter at Luke Winstall, covers recruiting for us on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. So from that standpoint, Luke, if you're a Clemson Tiger fan, I mean, does the attention continue to kind of follow the 2024 group at this point, or do you think there could be more momentum for this 2025 group looming? And also, I know a lot of people are going to ask me about Mike Matthews, so I can't let you off without asking you about him too. But give us some insight.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, where should the Tigers' attention be, 2024 or 2025 at this point?
Well, right now, if you're a Clemson fan, there's a lot of work to be done in the 2024 class. And I know the 2025 momentum is intriguing, and that's something that, everybody's going to be following. So you want to follow both if you can. But with the 24s, there are still so many good prospects left on the board. And we are at such a key time. Early to mid-June, you've got these OVs, official visits. Guys are going on 3, 4, 5. Eventually, in a few months, they'll be able to go on unlimited official visits. But I look at some of the stuff in that 24 class. Clemson's done with the OV weekend. They did one of them, and it's over. So I understand if your attention starts to flip onto the 25s, but I think that Clemson really likes their June, July recruiting runs, and 2025 has contributed to that here, and that's brought some nice momentum lately. But I think the 24 class, because there's so many questions, and if you want to know what to watch, what is Thomas Austin going to do on the O-line? There's work to be done. There are prospects right now that Clemson has a real shot at, and I'm looking at Fletcher Westphal as one of those. Took a visit to Clemson. He took an official visit to Georgia. He's liked both, but right now doesn't seem like he's a take on Georgia's board. So Clemson, he knows he's a take at Clemson. He's really considering both of those schools. So there's a chance for Clemson to make a move, and if they play their cards right, they'll be able to, try and lock a guy like Fletcher Westphal in. So I'm watching that because Georgia's after so many big name offensive linemen. So Fletcher Westphal could be a crown jewel in Clemson's class because they missed on a few in-state guys. So I would say watch that position. You've got some receivers coming in. The DBs from last year's class look good. Sammy Brown at linebacker gives a lot of hope. But, O-line is the thing that I'm really looking at right now because I feel pretty good about most other position groups.
Now, one of the hot topics, I just brought him up, Mike Matthews. There's a lot of speculation. Clemson's only got 2 wide receiver spots. They're already gobbled up. But Matthews is a kid that Clemson's clearly keeping very high on their radar out of Parkview over there in Liburn, Georgia. But my question would be on that front, I mean, if Matthews says, hey, I want to come play at Clemson as a wide receiver, Dabo Swinney's got a little wiggle room there to take him if they want to. Do you think ultimately that Clemson, I know we talked about this last week, but where do they stand at this point? Are they still squarely in the mix?
As far as, with Mike, that situation is one that this weekend is one to watch because people have talked about Tennessee, and obviously Clemson's been in the picture for Mike for a long time. Before Mike was a 5-star, Clemson was in on him. They've been building that relationship. But now Tennessee's got momentum. His coaches have been telling people and, telling me that, hey, don't count USC out. They're really a team that you guys don't focus on enough.
Southern Cal.
Okay,
Southern Cal.
Okay.
Right? Let's make sure everybody, Southern Cal, not South Carolina, right?
Yep. Yeah, thank you for the clarification there. USC, Southern Cal. Some people might even say the real USC, but I'm not going there.
That's going to go over well in Columbia. Carry on.
I didn't say it. I said some people would. But so here's the thing, right? They are really in this for Mike. They're hosting him on an official visit this weekend. And that California thing is really throughout spring come into play for Mike. And I take a look at that and I say USC and Tennessee have the most momentum right now as I see it. Now, this is a hard one to predict because Mike is not exactly, out here leaking information or saying much. He's saying good things about everybody. I think Clemson is definitely in the mix. I think they are the team that at receiver, if Mike wants to come, you make a spot. You get that done if you're Clemson, because there's not, many fluid people like Matthews. There's not that many better athletes. And you take a look at what Mike can bring to the table, you make a spot at receiver. I think it'd be crazy not to. So for Clemson, really what I'm getting at here, I think you're kind of running in third, but you're able to reach out and jump into first, depending on what kind of moves are made. But I don't like Clemson as the favorite. And if I were a betting man, I would not bet Clemson now. I would say it's more of a USC-Tennessee race with a little shade towards Tennessee. So not trying to give false hope. I don't think Mike is headed to Clemson. That's kind of how I see it shaking out at this point. But again, we're in the middle of OVs, and Tennessee gets the last official visit. And you know what people say about that. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but, I'm saying a lot really just to tell you that it continues to be close, and I don't view Clemson as the favorite at this point, but they're within striking distance.
So there you go. That was some of our time with Luke Winstall from late last week. And again, we're going to try to get caught up with William Qualkenbush on the program on Wednesday. So nonetheless, again, programming note for you. We're going to be off the air the week of July the 4th. And I'm hopeful that Morgan Thomas will be able to host the show the week of July the 17th. And then we'll be at the ACC kickoff for July 25th, 26th, and 27th, which hard to believe, but the ACC kickoff a little over a month away, and that legitimately, the title is right. I mean, that for me is the real kickoff of the 2023 college football campaign. All right, coming up on the program, we'll take a look at some of the top stories that have been going on in the world of sports over the weekend. Plus, Ryan Day, we'll get into this next. Ryan Day, as good as he has been, and it's been outstanding. Wait till you hear the numbers. As good as he has been at Ohio State, what kind of pressure is mounting in Columbus, given the fact that the Buckeyes have now lost back-to-back games to the Michigan Wolverines? With a quick break, we'll touch on that when we get back. Stay with us right here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Clemson Sports Talk, the show that shakes the Southland. Fox Sports Radio 1400, the Midlands, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. You can also listen on the Apple Music app. Just search for our station, Fox Sports Radio 1400. Don't forget Teddy Hefner from 9 to noon each and every day as well, giving you great coverage of not only the South Carolina Gamecocks, the Clemson Tigers, pro baseball, talking sports with Teddy Hefner, 9 to noon here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. All right, Ryan Day, Ohio State. I mean, they have been phenomenal under his tenure, except they haven't won the big one. They haven't hoisted a national title, and maybe even more so, most recently, you're talking about a guy who has now lost back-to-back ball games against the Michigan Wolverines. From that standpoint, this year, not necessarily a make-or-break season for a guy that makes $9.5 million and has a 45-6 record overall. But I don't know. And let me add this to that conversation. It's a guy who, since taking over for full-time purposes, has finished third, second, sixth, and fourth in the country, respectively, in the AP poll every season. A guy who has played in the Fiesta, Sugar, a national championship, Rose, and Peach Bowl. All of that coming after Urban Meyer was placed on administrative leave back in 2018. But now Ryan Day, who's had back-to-back seasons ending 11-2 with 11-2 records. Most significantly, though, his only 2 conference losses in his career at the hands of the Michigan Wolverines in 2021 and 2022, having to watch Michigan make their way into the college football playoff. The question becomes, how valuable is this season, given the fact that the Ohio State Buckeyes arguably recruit as good as anybody in the country, save at this point maybe for the Georgia Bulldogs? I mean, there's pressure on the Buckeyes. There's an incredible amount of pressure on Ryan Day. And if his tenure continues down the path that he's currently on, he's going to begin to rewrite some of the records that Dabo Swinney pieced together during his first few seasons as a head coach. Because, again, you are talking about a guy who right now has won 45 out of his first 51 games as a head coach. One could argue, just given what Clemson's been under Dabo Swinney, that his first 51 games may very well be the worst 51 games he's ever had. Dabo Swinney was 32-19 through 51 games. That takes you into the 2012 season where the Tigers finished 11-2. They started that year 3-0 though. And when you tally that 3-0 into Swinney's 10-4 finish in 2011, 6-7 finish in 2010, 9-5 finish in 2009, and 4-3 in 2008, that's 51 games, and he was 32-19. Now, since his first 51 games where he lost 19, that's all he's lost since. I believe he's like 161-39. So I guess he's lost 20 games. Go like 129-21 during that span. Something ridiculous. I tried to tally it up, but I'll be honest, I may have miscalculated somewhere along the way. But the broader point being is really about how good Ryan Day's tenure has started at Ohio State and the pressure that currently exists, even though they've been that good in recent years, because they've had to watch Michigan find their way into the college football playoff. 803-450-0086, text line, phone line. Be a part of the program anytime, any place, and of course, anywhere. And what I think is inherently frustrating as well for Ohio State Buckeye fans is that they've had so much talent on both sides of the ball. They've reached into the South to pull great defensive players, great offensive players. They've had the best wide receiving group in America. They've still got some of the best wideouts in the country on their roster. But if now all of a sudden you can't beat Michigan, who they had beaten 5 consecutive times, probably would have been 6 had they been able to play in the COVID-19 season, but they didn't get a chance to match up because of the pandemic. And I guess Michigan having some issues there. However, because of that fact, you now have a pressure cooker there in Columbus because it is a program that has certainly achieved at the highest of levels. But fans would feel and say that they have underachieved in recent years. And now, heading into the 2023 season, you know, if you look at preseason rankings across the country, you're going to find Ohio State at or near the top. Subsequently, you are always going to see Georgia Tech there because they've earned it. But there is a belief that the Buckeyes should finish with a berth in the college football playoff. But if they can't beat Michigan for a third consecutive season, what does that do? What does that do for Ryan Day's tenure? As great as it's been, what would 3 consecutive losses to Michigan and not winning the Big Ten 3 consecutive years mean to a guy who's had one of the best records in college football? Quick break. We'll come back with more right after this. Clemson Sports Talk, the show that shakes the Southland. So Bob Huggins has found himself in some trouble over the weekend as he was arrested for a DUI. He had already had an incident on a radio show where he used a slur, and from that standpoint was already facing a suspension to start the year. But after a DUI, and his second DUI that I'm aware of in his life, Bob Huggins at 69 will be stepping away from the West Virginia head coaching job, which begins a little bit of a carousel, obviously, because that is a really good job in basketball. Huggins was arrested Friday in Pittsburgh after police observed a black SUV blocking traffic around 8:30 p.m. with a flattened, shredded tire, and the driver's side door was open. Officers told Huggins to move the vehicle off the road, then pulled him over when they observed that he was having trouble maneuvering the SUV. The officers questioned Huggins, saying he had trouble answering questions like where he was, believing he was intoxicated. They asked him to perform a field sobriety test, which he failed. According to the report, a breathalyzer determined that Huggins' blood alcohol content was 0.21, more than twice the legal limit of 0.08 in Pennsylvania. A blood sample was also taken from Huggins at the hospital prior to his release. Huggins, who is a native of Morgantown, played basketball for the Mountaineers, was also arrested for drunken driving in 2004 while he was the head coach at Cincinnati. He pleaded no contest at that time and was suspended for approximately 2 months by the school to undergo rehabilitation. So nearly 20 years later, DUI has now forced Huggins out of his job at West Virginia, and certainly a top-tier spot is open in a Power 5 league. As you know, when I look back at what he did there at West Virginia and the job that he did at that program has made them quite a desirable landing point, in my opinion. Just look at what he did. I mean, he arrived at West Virginia in the Big East in 2007. He took that team to the Sweet 16. The following year, the round of 64. The next year, 2009, 2010, they go 31-7. They make it to the Final Four. Round of 32, round of 64. Missed the tournament in 2012, their first season in the Big 12. Got to the NIT in 2013. Sweet 16 in 2015. Round of 64 in 2016. Back-to-back Sweet 16s in 2017 and 2018. Now, it's been down recently. But what is that during his tenure? 5 runs to the Sweet 16 and a run to the Final Four. They were in the tournament this past season, 19-15, 7-11 overall. But you get the right person in there into that job, given their history at this point, and it's hard not to say that it is a very good job in the world of college basketball. So Bob Huggins, his career comes to a screeching halt after a tumultuous month or so. And just when he needed to be squeaky clean, Bob Huggins couldn't be. And his statement basically said as much, that he's got to get his life together. So here's what he said in a statement. Today, I have submitted a letter to President Gordon G. and Vice President and Director of Athletics Ren Baker, informing them of my resignation and my intention to retire as the head men's basketball coach at West Virginia University, effective immediately. My recent actions do not represent the values of the university or the leadership expected in this role. While I have always tried to represent our university with honor, I have let all of you and myself down. I'm solely responsible for my conduct and sincerely apologize to the university community, particularly the student athletes, coaches, and staff in our program. I must do better, and I plan to spend the next few months focused on my health and my family so that I can be the person they deserve. He went on to say that it has been his honor of his professional career to lead the men's basketball team at his alma mater, and he takes great pride in the accomplishment. But I am most proud of the tremendous young men who chose to spend their formative years with us and who have gone on to do great things with their lives. I was born in Morgantown, graduated from West Virginia University, and had the pleasure of coaching here for 17 seasons as an assistant or head coach. It will always be my home, and I will always be a Mountaineer. So Bob Huggins out in a major job now available in college basketball. I was looking at his coaching staff. Ron Everhart, Josh Ellert, and DeMar Johnson. I don't know much about any of those guys. Matter of fact, I had to even look at their pictures to see if I recognize their faces from, being assistant coaches anywhere that I would know. Everhart at one point was with Georgia Tech back in the 80s, but has since been at some, just smaller programs. Josh Elert was only a grad assistant at Kansas State. He's been at West Virginia for a while. And then the last guy was DeMar Johnson. Johnson played 16 seasons of professional basketball, 7 in the NBA, and was a McDonald's All-American and played under Huggins at Cincinnati. But I don't think he's done any other coaching. At least he didn't have any other coaching listed that I could find under his resume. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to that basketball program and where they look for their next hire, as Bob Huggins, I would say in basketball at this point, is one of the bigger names, because you don't have Mike Krzyzewski, and you don't have Roy Williams in college basketball anymore. And he's a guy who's had success at both Cincinnati and West Virginia and had been coaching for many years. And now his off-the-court behavior has found Bob Huggins' way out the door in Morgantown. Final segment coming up here on the program on a Monday afternoon. It is the show that shakes the Southland.
What have you done for me lately? It's a fair question. Just don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget history. Lucky for us at Clemson, the answer to the questions, what have you done for me lately, and what have you done always, are the same. We win.
Final segment on a Monday afternoon, the show that shakes the Southland, Clemson Sports Talk. Again, we'll go around the horn here with a couple of news items. An Oregon State recruit, Brandon Smith, is facing attempted murder charges. Smith, who announced his commitment to Oregon State recently, actually earlier this month, was arrested on suspension of attempted murder. on suspicion, of attempted murder. He was a running back at Santa Barbara City College. It was one of 4 people arrested in an incident that took place June 2nd, the same day he announced his commitment to the Beavers. The Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office said Smith was arrested on June 7th and is being held on a $2 million bond. Oregon State told ESPN that Smith never signed with the team and will not be a part of the program. Smith is a Chicago native who rushed for 1,231 yards with 16 touchdowns last season at Santa Barbara City and took an official visit to Oregon State in late May and announced on May 25th that he had received a scholarship offer. Hours after he announced his commitment on social media, Santa Barbara County Sheriff's deputies responded to a report of a fight near a community pool. Upon arrival, they found a 20-year-old man seriously injured. All 4 suspects were arrested on June 7th on suspicion of attempted murder, robbery, and conspiracy. The sheriff's deputies believe that the victim and the suspects knew each other. So that's some news there out of the state of Oregon, I guess technically the state of California. Also, some sad news as a former college player at Miami and the son of NFL Hall of Famer Ray Lewis died of a suspected overdose. Ray Lewis III, the son of 2-time Super Bowl champion Ray Lewis, died of a suspected overdose, according to police reports. Lewis's younger brother, Rashawn, first posted about his brother's death Thursday on Instagram. Lewis died Wednesday after officers were called to a Central Florida home and found him unconscious in a bedroom. Lewis was 28 years old, played cornerback at Miami for 2 seasons before transferring to Coastal Carolina and finishing his career at Virginia Union. Police said in a statement that evidence and witness accounts show this incident to be a tragic accident. So Ray Lewis loses his oldest son, unfortunately, to an apparent overdose. Lewis played 12 games at Coastal Carolina at cornerback, had 19 tackles during his time with the Chanticleers. And finally, this is a strange one. I saw it. I need to do a little bit more research into it. But Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin flip Austin Simmons from Florida to the Rebels. But here's the thing about Austin Simmons that I can't quite put together, and I'm having trouble understanding, because I don't know how the next thing I'm about to tell you is possible. Simmons is the 77th ranked prospect in the 2025 recruiting class. Now remember, the 2025 recruiting class are players who are juniors in high school. For example, we talked about Blake Hebert earlier. That's a 2025 guy. But Simmons is going to reclassify to the 2023 class to enroll in Ole Miss this summer. I don't understand how that's possible unless, and this would be the only thing I could think of, unless Austin Simmons failed school at some point in his life. Because that's moving your recruitment up 2 years. It's odd enough. I don't even know how you have the credits at high school yet to move up and reclassify. He's enrolling this summer, so it's not like he's got time to go and do this coursework. I have no idea. I do not recall ever in all of my years of following college football, I've never seen a player reclassify. Put it this way, okay? Florida has DJ Lagway committed in 2024. Right? So Lagway's got another year of high school. Austin Simmons was going to be the guy behind Lagway at Florida. Now he becomes a freshman at Ole Miss while Lagway still has a year of high school left to play. He's potentially going to be a guy whose first year in college is going to be 2025, and now he could play 3 seasons and leave in 2026. I don't know, man. I got nothing for you on that one. That is a first. I've seen guys move 1 year up. Austin Simmons is going to move 2 classes up and play at Ole Miss. All right, we got to get out of here. Thank you for being a part of the program. Until tomorrow, as always, y'all take care now. Hey, go Tigers.